He currently serves as the UNLV strength and conditioning, boxing, and track coach, while also playing a crucial role in winning multiple world title fights. He is the strength and conditioning coach for the world-class fighters and champions, including Shawn Porter, Shane Mosley Jr., Vidal Riley, Badou Jack, Caleb Plant, and others. He is the builder of champions, Coach Larry Wade.
Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Hey, it's good to see you, Coach Wade.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us here on Title Unboxed. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I was excited about this interview. I mean, a couple of days in a row, waiting for it to come, and I was like, all right, today's the day. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So how are you adapting through all this, all these quarantines and shutdowns? And I mean, I guess the good thing is what you do, you can be mobile with it. So how have you adapted and changed up your program and made it work for you?
Well, let me be honest. How I look at coaching is there are coaches who are good coaches, and then there are coaches who are great coaches. And then there's coaches who just know how to win.
Yeah.
Right. And so I consider myself to be a coach that knows how to win. And with that being said, you have to adapt. You have to adjust. At the end of the day, it's about the results. It's not about your emotion. It's not about your opinion. It's about getting to the goal line. Yeah. So when COVID hit and we had to deal with, the obstacles that were in front of us from a health standpoint, what I did was try to figure out what was the best way to create a protocol in which we all feel safe.
Right.
So I kind of integrated this 2-week process where everyone kind of got tested. And then I got with one person, and then 2 weeks later, I started training another person. And then 2 weeks later, I trained another person. That way I can kind of manage the possibility of whatever could come my way. On top of that, what I was able to do was get them to test consistently along with myself. Today, I think I had over 50 COVID tests now.
Oh, wow.
Over 50 in the past year. And that's what's needed. And even now I'm taking 3 tests a week just to make sure I'm healthy for them and them to get it done. But with that, once that was in place, now being a strength conditioning coach, you need equipment, right?
Yeah.
And so with everything being shut down, I had to figure out how I was going to have the equipment and also where were they going to train them at since everything was shut down. So we ended up saying, okay, the most obvious place was parks, free space, open space, which they say is the safest place for us to be. And then I was so fortunate enough to have Title Boxing send me a number of tools that actually helped me tremendously to get the job done. So that being said, I'm using Title Boxing equipment that was very great in keeping them, strong and maintaining them. And I was able to do it at the park. So with their belief and work ethic and the tools that Title Boxing provided, it definitely helped me, be able to continue my business. And I was happy about it. And we went on to be, in the year of 2020, undefeated.
Yeah, awesome.
It was undefeated season. So it helped a lot.
Well, champions adapt, right?
They do.
That's what separates the goods from the greats.
I totally agree. Yeah. I call it 9 inches. The distance between here to here, 9 inches. That's the difference between good and being good and great at what you do.
That's all there is to it. So I want to, for those that don't know who Larry Wade is and where you came from, I do want to give it a little bit of background because you come at this sport from a slightly different angle, and I think that's part of what sets you apart at the end of the day. You actually were a track and field star at Texas A&M. So tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of segued into where you are now.
It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to make it as short as I possibly can.
That's right.
I was from Texas, got a full scholarship to Texas A&M University. I was a hurler at the time where I ended up going to Texas A&M, being 2-time national champion, inducted to the Hall of Fame there. Turned out to be one of the best in the world, top 2, 3 in the world, most of my career. And then I was able to transition into being a strength conditioning coach / track and field coach for elite athletes.
Yep.
And I ended up doing really well in that area, over 50 international, national championship medals, world championship gold, bronze, and silver as a coach, and sent multiple people to the Olympic Games. And then I was kind of given an opportunity, and I'm kind of rushing through it so we can see the transition.
Okay. Yep.
But I became this, well-known, trainer for speed and power. Mm-hmm. And that kind of transitioned into working with NFL guys, to multiple NFL guys, getting them ready for speed, combine, keeping them in shape. And that transitioned into some other agents getting my information. I'm working with NBA guys. And what was happening at the time, I was making this transition. I'm one of those guys not fully aware of where God's going to always take me, but I'm receptive and accepting of whatever that direction is going to be. Yeah. So I found myself training pro basketball players, right? My wife was the coach at track and field at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada. I came out to visit her. Now, at the time, I was actually in a deal with Gilbert Arenas, who's a former NBA basketball player. Uh-huh. Yep. And I was working with him at the time, and he just happened to be a week. He didn't show up for practice. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go visit, my wife and my son. I get out there, I'm on the track, and I'm just watching, and I see this guy who has this really bad, mean scowl on his face, very intimidating looking guy. And then I see this other young man training with him. He kind of looks like a football player. So I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, he looks like a football player. Let me just go introduce myself. I go to introduce myself and I say, hi, I'm Larry Wade, strength and conditioning coach. Give him a card. He says, hey, I'm Kenny Porter. And I'm like, nice to meet you. Now, mind you, I didn't know who Kenny Porter was.
Sure.
And he was like, this is my son, Shawn Porter, who I didn't know who Shawn Porter was. Mm-hmm. He looked like a running back to me. So I asked him, I said, does he play football? He said he used to. And then he started giving me some stats on him. So he said, but now he's a boxer. And I'm like, oh, okay. Gave him the card. Usually when you give a card out, you might not hear back from a person for years if you hear from them at all.
Right.
Kenny Porter called me one night, like 11 p.m., 2 weeks later. And he was like, I want you to work with my son. And I was asking him to what extent. And he told me, and I said, well, I haven't worked with a pro boxer before. I am a professional, strength conditioning coach, and I work with these other number of athletes, but, I don't want to take a chance on, possibly hurting a young man's future. And he asked me, he said, can you get people in shape? I said, that's what I do. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what the sports are all about, being strong, being fast, and being as light as possible doing it. Right. Yeah. And so I said, sure. I did a session with him. Him and Shawn both loved it. And then they asked me, hey, we got a fight coming up in 4 months. We want to bring you to our camp. Would you like to be part of that? I was like, what's a camp? Right. And so he's like, that's like 8 weeks where a person gets ready for a world title fight. I said, so the camp you want me bringing, he's fighting the world title. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know. Right. And he says, listen, you're one of the best I've ever worked with. And I've worked with many of them. And he said, what I want you to do, we will pay you for your strength conditioning sessions, but I want you to come to the gym every day for free. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So I started going to the gym every day for free just to make sure I wasn't going to ruin this young man's opportunity. 4 months later, we're world champions. Yeah. And so that's how I kind of got started. I didn't take another guy on for at least another year because I wanted to make sure, and I still was going to the gym every day for free. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make sure I knew enough about the sport along with my own knowledge as a strength conditioning coach to be able to truly help these guys. Yeah. So I took another guy on. Next thing you know, Badou Jack. We won a couple more world titles. So it just kind of kept building, and that's how I ended up being here. Crazy. And now I just did the stats the other day after Caleb Plant's fight, and I'm, as you know, I work with Caleb Plant as well, who's the super middleweight IBF world champion. And my stats are I'm over 90% wins. He was my 20th world title fight at this point, and that's kind of how I ended up being here now.
Amazing. What a great introduction into the sport, though, because of Shawn and Kenny's work ethic, their relationship, and their willingness to put in the work. Mm-hmm. I mean, that probably allowed you to really flourish under the circumstances,
Totally. One thing I can honestly say, Kenny Porter is definitely a teacher. Mm-hmm. He's definitely competitive, but he teaches nonstop. And the only true example I can give you is he's a certified boxing trainer. So as he brought me in, he's telling me everything that I need to know from a not from a conditioning standpoint, but from a boxing standpoint, what a trainer's supposed to know, right? Yeah. And he says to me, one of the first things I want to do is make sure you will get certified to be a boxing trainer. Yep. Level 1 boxing trainer. I said, okay, cool. I'm nervous because every test that I take, they're pretty challenging. Like, oh, I got to study. And so I get ready to go take the test. I go down to the location where I'm supposed to take the test, and they give you a little review before, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they gave me the piece of paper, and I'm taking the test. Not one time did I look into the book. Not one time did I have a question of what the answer was. And I turned it in. I turned it in so fast, I got nervous because I'm the only one who's turned theirs in. And it's like 40 people in this room. So I'm thinking maybe I made some mistakes, and maybe I don't really know what I think I know. So I go through the test again. And after I go to the test again, I was like, yeah, I kind of feel like this is it. So by this time, I'm the second person to turn it in because I took time to double check it. And so when I turned it in, they actually graded, and I make 100. I'm the only one in the room who made 100. Nice. Now, the reason I'm saying it that way is because all the information Kenny Porter had been giving me over time, that's what I was using to answer the questions. Mm-hmm. Yep. It wasn't necessarily the book. He was teaching me all that information, so I didn't even have to use the book. Yeah. Fortunately for me, he allowed me in the camp. He gave me an opportunity, and he was also teaching me along the way. Yeah.
Well, and also, again, you come at it from a different perspective. A lot of, I think, historically, strength and conditioning is new to boxing. New as in within the last 40 years. Right. Before that, it was the coach, the trainer, throwing the medicine ball around, do 3 rounds with the jump rope, do some jumping jacks. I mean, that was the extent of it. There's a guy, Mackie Shilstone. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He worked with Michael Spinks to bulk him up to fight Larry Holmes in 1985, I believe it was. And that was really the first time I and most of the boxing community heard about a strength and conditioning guy that focused solely on that.
Right. Well, I got a Mackie Shilstone story for you because Mackie definitely created a position or an avenue for us to be relevant in the sport and to be necessary in the sport to elevate your craft. Well, this is the blessed part of it. I swear I've been blessed this whole entire way. I'm with Shawn Porter, right? And I get a phone call from a guy named Michael Leonardi, who was like, hey, I know about you as a trainer. I've been researching you for a while. I'm interested in you working with Badou Jack. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. He kind of comes back and forth for about 2 weeks. And then we decide to sit down and talk. We sit down and talk, and he says, so coach, this is where we're at. We like you as a trainer, especially locally, because they didn't feel like there was that many local trainers they could use. Right. And so they said, but Badou's main strength conditioning coach is going to be who? None other, Mackie Shilstone. Oh, right?
There you go.
And so I'm sitting here, and mind you, at this point, I don't know, research everybody who could be that person, right? Uh-huh, yeah. And so Mackie Shilstone was one of the guys that I was like, hey, he's here, right? Yeah, yeah. And so I get an opportunity to talk to him, and he's actually in camp with Andre Ward at the time, right? And so he wasn't going to be able to get back in time to be there for Badou's complete camp because he was finishing up Andre Ward's camp. So they asked me, Mike Leonardi, if I would be his coach, strength conditioning coach, but yet be the second under Mackie Shilstone, right? And for me, that was the easy answer. Yeah, right? Like, yeah, I'll do it.
I'll put us with that guy.
Why don't you want to? Why wouldn't you want to, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I have an opportunity, and in my mind, I'm still one of the fresher, younger guys in the game, at least not by age, but by opportunities. Like, yeah, sure, I would. A week passed. I'm talking to Mackie the whole time, trying to get his input, and I'm telling him what I'm doing. And so Mackie's kind of allowing me to use my own program, but I'm telling him everything that I'm doing. The first week passed. The second week passed. Same concept. We're communicating. I'm giving him what I want, what I'm telling him, and he's telling me things and kind of sharing. And I think we're working really, really well.
Yeah.
Going into that third week, Badou says to me, hey, I'm not bringing Mackie in. I'm just going to use you. And now I'm like, uh-oh, wait a minute. I'm not trying to take over, his thing. I'm just trying to fit in. I didn't want it to come off as if I was trying to backdoor him for the position or anything like that. So I called Mackie. I said, hey, listen, man, I didn't have anything to do with this. He said, no, coach, no, you're doing a wonderful job. He says, and as Mackie's, he's gotten a little older and he's putting more focus on his family. Sure. So he was like, coach, listen, you're doing a great job. Do your job. I'm going to go home and I want to spend some more time with my wife because, I haven't spent much time with her. So I'm going to do that. But you're doing a great job. And if you need me, reach out to me. And I said, are you sure you're okay with this? He said, no, coach, listen, you're doing great. So he gave me his blessings to push forward with Badou. And that's why, first of all, he didn't have to endorse me. Sure. He didn't have to support me, but he did.
Yeah.
And that told me a lot about him as a trainer. Right. By who else? One of the best ever to do it. Right.
Seriously.
And so for me, that's why I said I think I'm kind of been blessed in great situations because if anybody's going to endorse me at this point, I would like that man to be the one. Yeah. So that's my Mackie Shilstone story, and he was always great. And Mackie, if you're out there, understand this. If you ever need me, I'm here for you.
But really, he was the first guy, at least in boxing, at least in my recollection, he was the first guy where we heard things like, interval training, explosive calisthenics.
Right.
Those things weren't regular terminology in boxing prior to him really coming into it. Right.
And I think what's happened is, and I've had plenty of time to think about this, over time, having different interviews and people asking me questions. Strength and conditioning wasn't really pushed to the forefront until the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. But boxing's been years and years before the 70s, right? Yeah, right. At least 70 years for the most part. Yeah. So that being said, what's happening, and you'll know this being in boxing, the athlete or boxer typically becomes the trainer. And then he trains someone, and then that boxer becomes the trainer. So the cycle of education and knowledge continues to be in that same cycle of understanding and same cycle of belief. Well, when you all of a sudden introduce a new concept of quote unquote strength conditioning, a lot of times they may not have all the information based on that. So introducing something new where they've shown years of success, they're usually a little resistant. Mm-hmm. And then in all fairness, when strength conditioning coaches were brought in, who typically were brought in from more of a football foundation of understanding, they brought these guys in, strength conditioning coaches, got these boxers extremely strong, big, but they were fatiguing faster. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they look good, but they're out of shape, right? Because they were building too much mass too fast. And so trainers started being like, wait, see, this strength conditioning stuff don't help. It helps rehearsals. They may look good, but they're not going to be in shape. So that kind of gave us kind of a black cross as far as, nah, that's not good. But once they start to realize that you have to be specific with your strength conditioning and have an understanding of muscle development, then a few of us were able to trickle in and apply our concepts and theories, and they see great results. Right. And so what I'm trying to do is not only be an impact into the sport, but also try to erase some of the image and reputation of some of the things that's happened before me. To say, hey, it's nothing wrong with developing mass. You just have to do it in a timely manner. Right. And in the correct way. And that goes back to your philosophy about functional movement. Definitely. And not only just a functional movement concept of it. And I've used this on multiple platforms where I try to explain to them about the muscle development and the oxygen use of the muscle. And I always use a city diagram. If you had a city where the freeways were created for 1 million people, the city's going to move according to the flow of traffic. So if it takes you typically an hour to get to work with 1 million people, what happens if you get all of a sudden in three months, because that took 2 to 3 months is how the lifting starts. What if you got 4 million now? Mm-hmm. It's going to take you 3 hours opposed to that 1 hour. So what happens is, for these guys are getting this muscle mass of 15%, 18%, they develop all this new muscle. They look great, but now they don't have the vessel infrastructure or the development to be allowed the oxygen to transfer the way it needs to for a larger muscle mass. So now they get tired faster because you got a bigger machine, but you're feeding it the same amount of energy, the same amount of oxygen, the same amount of food that you would for a smaller machine. It's going to run out of gas sooner. Yeah. So it has to be done in a timely fashion.
What a great analogy. That really simplifies it. So let's talk about two sides of the weight coin. We'll go back to Mackie Shilstone just for one more second. I know he built Michael Spinks up, who actually probably walked around about 190 anyway. So getting up to 200 pounds is not a big step for him. But there is a difference between putting on weight versus putting on strength. Yeah. Yeah.
Well. Let me. I'm gonna address both, but let me go back to your original statement that it probably wasn't a lot. There's something that normal people take for granted, which is ground awareness and timing. Being able to move at 180 and having ground awareness is totally different than being able to move at 190, even though it's 10 pounds, and having ground awareness. You can lose speed, you can lose timing, and it can really hurt you. So your body has to have at least 3 to 6 months to adjust before you consider to have perfect timing based on that weight. So him making that adjustment sounds simple to most, but he's smart enough to know how to do it and to do it in the right amount of increments so the timing isn't lost or the speed isn't lost. Now, as far as size and weight is concerned, let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
A person can be 190, right? But yet only have, let's say, 60% muscle mass, right? So usually the weight cut's going to be a little easier. You can get down a little faster, but you can go up as well.
Yeah.
When a person goes in that same amount of scaled weight, but now has 75% muscle mass opposed to the 60 or 65, they bring a little bit more power. But here's the thing now. Now maybe a little harder to cut the weight, to get it off. That doesn't mean that you're in a worse position. That means you develop more. If you go back and you look at Caleb Plant, Caleb was always a great athlete, always talented, always gifted. But you've seen his muscle mass increase over the last couple of years. And that's what has allowed him not only to be faster with his hands and faster with his feet, but also be able to control and handle certain movements from a functionality standpoint that maybe before he may not have been able to handle. And I think that's also helped him elevate in everything that he's doing. So it does matter. And 60 pounds with 60% muscle mass and 90 pounds with 75% muscle mass is totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, I get you. So let's talk about the other side of it. As the sport has progressed, fighters are becoming more and more extreme in their weight loss measures. They want to gain that advantage by fighting in lower weight class. Talk about the effects. What are the effects, the long-term effects, the short-term effects on an athlete when they're going to extreme measures or doing that in an improper way? I know that's a really broad question, but
let's talk about the no. Trust me, I have an answer and a very passionate one. Let's talk about the immediate effects first.
Okay.
Bad weight cuts typically mean extreme water cuts. And if you have bad weight cuts with extreme water cut, a lot of times you lose valuable liquid that helps you function not only physically but mentally.
Right.
And so a lot of times what happens to guys, they cut the weight wrong. The water on top of the brain isn't there as much, and they get hit in a fight. They may not show it then. They survive. Fight's over. Hopefully they don't get knocked out, but they walk away from it feeling like I just lost. What ends up happening is they have brain bleeds because there's no fluid to protect itself.
Right.
And they die 3 days later. If they don't die, then what happens is they're usually paralyzed,
right,
or have some kind of extreme physical deficiencies. That is the extreme and more instant effect.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Now, long-term effect. If you do it over time, first thing that you'll start to see first, especially as you get older, is you have no control over your metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes you won't cut it, and you're like, and I've heard fighters say this all the time, man, the older I get, I just can't cut it no more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not just about age. It's also about how many times you've damaged your metabolism and confused your body to believe one thing opposed to another. And now your endocrine system is all screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And now it doesn't know what to do. It's as confused as you are because you've damaged it and attacked it so much. Yeah. Every body, no matter when I say body, I mean physical body, is going to self-preserve. It's going to get in the defensive mode. So now it's not going to let you cut. It's not going to cut the weight because it doesn't know when you're going to provide the proper nutrition or fluid to it again.
Right. It goes into
so
a
it's going to hold on
mode.
to everything you give it. It's in survival mode. Exactly. Yeah. So you can't continue to attack your body in a negative capacity and think that it's going to continue to respond the same way. And that's what ends up happening, where they get the body to wasn't respond anymore. So they have to go to more and more extreme measures to get it off. Mm-hmm. And that's when it gets dangerous. So the way that we cut now, the way that we approach it now is totally different. But of course, it's more scientific. And yes, we will cut, but it's a little longer period of time. It's not done over. I've seen some really bad cuts where I've seen a guy lose 16 to 20 pounds in a matter of a day or two. Crazy. And they feel like, oh, even if they won, I've seen a guy win the fight. Even if he won, he like, oh, I did a great job. I won. It works again. So if you get it done one time, they definitely believe they can get it done again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they continue to do the same type of thing, opposed to actually putting some time and preparation into it, and or hiring someone that can actually educate them to do it in a safer manner.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a dangerous habit.
Definitely a dangerous habit. But what happens is the reverse. Everyone that you see that does it that way, when you see them a week or two after the fight, they 30 pounds up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
30 pounds up. So you just basically took your body from a 50-pound weight exchange, from 20 lost to 30 back on in a matter of 7 to 10 days. There's no way you can possibly say that's going to keep you healthy. It's not. You're going to pay for it. High blood pressure, diabetes, all kinds of things that long-term will affect you.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've had conversations with guys before, and they don't understand the fluid around the brain and how that protects your brain from that long-term damage. I've said time and time again, if you go back in history, how many heavyweights ever died in the boxing ring? 0. Because they don't cut weight. It's all the lighter weight guys that are going to extreme measures to gain that competitive advantage, or what they perceive as that.
Right. I didn't even know that. That was great information. I did not know that any heavyweights have ever died in the ring. That is actually good information. Thank you for that.
And they're bigger
so that
guys,
just helped me fight
harder.
my argument when I'm trying to tell them to do it differently.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, they punch much harder.
So let's talk about another controversial topic that also I think needs to be the perception of it maybe needs to change a little bit, because we are in a different time and day and age. Lifting weights. I know old school trainers are like, don't lift weights. It's going to make you slow. It's going to weigh you down, puts unnecessary weight on you. I know you don't have that same philosophy, and I'd love for you to share what your mindset is on that and how you feel about that.
Well, here's the thing. Once again, I think that some of the previous strength conditioning coaches prior to me, and prior to, the ones like Mackie Shilstone and trainers like that, they came from more of a football background, and they were putting on muscle mass and not understanding that certain exercise will limit a boxer for certain movements, right? So I think a lot of times they start to see these changes, start to see these problems, and they start to say it's a bad idea, where what I believe in is what they call functional movement strength. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't do some of the base type lifts randomly to kind of get a base overall strength level.
Yep.
but most of my movements are functional movement strength exercises that are going to be used in every movement that they're going to use inside the ring. Mm-hmm. Right. And I do a lot of isolated stuff too, so that individual hip strength is needed. So usually a boxer is offset. So I need each leg individually to be able to be strong and function, opposed to just putting a boxer in a squat position when typically their feet are never side by side for anything that they do. Yeah. So I don't do a lot of squats in that regards. I will touch it from time to time just to kind of give me a little balance, but for the most part, they'll never need that. So I'll do isolated stuff a lot that I know that they could use in throwing punches and actually executing more power from the ground up. This is where I try to make the biggest impact. Yeah. From a strength standpoint. Right.
So but you don't necessarily either subscribe to the idea that that's low weight and high repetition.
No, not at all. I think that in some cases you have to put on more mass to deliver the power. So because you can get a guy, say for example, you get a guy who has an ectomorph frame. He's already a slender guy, right? Yeah. So 9 times out of 10, he has an ectomorph frame. He has thin muscles. He can have high metabolism, and he can already do endurance type stuff. That body type automatically typically has that condition or ability. So with a guy like that, with an ectomorph frame, you got to try to put a little bit more mass on him so he can bring a little bit more power to the punch, right? And that's a big part that a trainer, and I want all you trainers to listen to me if you're listening, you want to know the body types. You want to know the 3 body types and how they function per division, from ectomorph, endomorph, to mesomorph. You need to know all of them and then understand how the body works. And once you have a general understanding of how it works, you can apply that concept to the boxer that's in front of you. And then, with you being with that person over time, be able to relate, does your fighter fit into that category? And if he or she does, then at least now you have a better understanding of how to develop them. So if you get a guy who has an ectomorph frame, you might want to put on a little bit more mass to help him deliver the power, because his metabolism is not going to ever allow him to get too big. Right. So you have to work harder. And with those type of guys, if you don't build them, let me tell you what happens when they stop training or when they stop fighting. For say the fight is over, they lose more. Mm-hmm. They don't hold on to the muscle, nor do they hold on to the fat. And I know you've seen that where guys have been working out and then they stop working out. Like, man, he looks skinny because he's not doing anything to help maintain it. Right. Yeah. I've seen it 1,000 times. You see a guy get smaller, but then what we see for the most part of those other guys that have more of that mesomorph frame get bigger. Mm-hmm. Something like that, or the endomorph frame or the heavyweights, they're going to be much bigger, but you'll see them gain weight. You got to know the body types in order to know how to work with them.
So with the mesomorph, a guy that's like stock, he's got like a Mike Tyson, big, thick thighs, broad shoulders. You probably don't go as heavy lifting with those guys,
Shawn
right?
Porter.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I won't go as heavy with those guys. Because you put the mass on those guys, you're going to have a hard time getting it off. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a hard time because they're going to hold on to it. They're going to develop more. With those type of guys, it's more cardio based. It's still isolated hip strength, but it doesn't have to be as heavy. And the great thing about those guys, which is absolutely amazing, they can lose it and gain it really fast. Mm-hmm. And they typically have the ability to run at the same level of someone who's smaller, like an ectomorph frame. But yet handle and endure the power of someone who has an endomorph frame. So they're very unique in that regard. They're able to do some things in a different way that some can't. Being right there in the middle gives them a little bit of best of both worlds.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's jump topics to nutrition, because I know you're heavily into that as well, not just the strength and conditioning side of it, but what you're putting into your body. I think I see a lot of people are all over the board when it comes to nutrition, again, because I don't know that boxing trainers and coaches really understand the basics. We talked to Chris Algieri here a few weeks ago, very knowledgeable guy about nutrition and, what works and what doesn't. Great guy. And I asked him this question. I want to ask you the same thing, because I think it's probably one of the most crucial things, not only what you're putting in your body leading up to a fight, but what is a good pre-fight meal after you've weighed in and you're ready to perform? Because I think a lot of guys don't know where to go. You hear, I want to eat a big, thick steak. I want protein. I want carbs. It's all over the board. So give us some insight as if you're an amateur coach
Well,
and you've
let me start with someone who actually has to do a weight cut, right?
Yeah.
If someone actually did a weight cut, there's a good chance that they have some point cut the salts. At some point, they've cut the sugars, and their body is fighting, moving from the anabolic state to the catabolic state, which means that the muscles may be starting to attack one another and they're deficient. The first thing that I wouldn't do is put some food in your stomach. I would actually just put some liquids in your stomach for the first hour and a half to let your body settle down, start to put some sodium back in your body, some sugar back in your body, let your body adjust to that first, and then gradually start to have a meal.
Yeah.
Right. I always watch trainers and who are at the high level, and I watch what they do with the athletes immediately after. And that helps me tell me at what level I'm dealing with. Right.
If they run to the buffet and
scale. Right. He had a guy brought his trainer brought him a Subway sandwich immediately off the scale. And I said, okay, yeah, he's going to lose. Right. Because immediately I knew the level of knowledge that was in that camp to be able to be at that position, which tells me that he just has a lot of talent. And that's why he's there. Yeah. And so my suggestion would be this. Immediately after, don't try to even eat big. Eat a small portion of carb, whether it be lasagna, whether it be some kind of pasta, but a very small portion of something, right? And let that settle you down for 30 minutes, maybe an hour and a half later. Then you have your regular meal. Your body should have settled down. It should start already processing that one. Now you can have carbs and a little fish with you, baked fish, not fried fish, but some baked fish. And that'll help you get through as you continue to rehydrate. The rehydration is the most important part in the whole thing. And reason I say that is not just based on the scientific information, but understanding this. They tell us that you can go 30 days without food and still live, but they say you can't go 7 to 10 without water. Yeah. So which one will be considered the most important? Water. So you want to get the most important element inside of you first, which is the liquids, especially since if you did a weight cut, there's a good chance that you haven't been drinking a lot in the last 24 hours. Hopefully that gave you an answer.
That's perfect. So let's go one step further and talk about from an amateur. Let's say if you're an amateur fighter and you are fighting in a 2 or 3 day tournament, you have to maintain a certain weight. Okay. What's the best way to do that? What should you be focusing on in between so that you're not trying to cut weight day after day after day, but you're able to maybe maintain that throughout a 3 or 4 day event?
Someone's not going to like this, but I'm going to say what my beliefs are. You're definitely exerting yourself at a high level. These guys are really, an amateur competition is a high level of punch output.
Yes.
High level. And a lot of times that will help determine if a fighter wins. It's not like the pros where it's more control. These guys are throwing punches and they're coming at you left and right. They have to be able to have, 2, 3 fights over that period of time. Mm-hmm. I would want my guy to put some type of protein carb drink inside himself immediately after each one. They kind of at least give him the nutrition he needs immediately to process because it's already in liquid. Yep. And then depending on who your fighter is, once again, you have to know the body type. Depending on who your fighter is, you might have to give them some more carbs to keep them going because if they have an ectomorph frame, they're just going to burn through it anyway.
Right.
So you don't worry about the weight as much if you have that frame. You have that mesomorph frame, you might have to, back off of the carbs more, but have more of a balance of carb and fish. Mm-hmm. You right? If you're a heavyweight, eat everybody, including the trainer if you want to. You're all right. But that's how I would position it, to give them something liquid first to help their body stay anabolic, the muscles stay anabolic instead of catabolic, because these guys are really exerting themselves at a high level. I've seen some really good amateurs do well. So I would have that drink for them immediately after, and then settle, eat a little something based on the body type, and if you know your athlete, you should, since you're training them, you kind of know how their body's going to be working. And what I do typically is in an amateur situation, I weigh my guys at least 3 times a day.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Morning, after, and night.
Yeah.
That way I can keep control over what the body's going to do. So if you're typically going to lose 1.5 pounds at night, I measure for that. So you can get on the scale and hit the board the next day. You wake up a little earlier just to make sure, but you'll make sure you hit the weight every time. I have some fighters who are ectomorph. Mm-hmm. They lose 4 pounds in their sleep every night. 4 pounds. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is.
And then I have some people like who are mesomorph may not lose but 0.7. So you have to take all that in consideration if you really want to make sure you're playing it close.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, you know, we talk a lot about it's about the work. It is about putting your time in the gym and all that. But I know you're also a big believer in the recovery part of it, getting enough rest, taking the time off. You know, I know sometimes people err on the side of doing a little bit too much. Right.
Well, let's. This one can be kind of deep. So let me try to put it into context so everybody can understand it.
I like deep. Deep is good. Let's go deep.
This is kind of deep because let's start with, and I'm going to touch everything you asked, but I want to start with the one that's more in front of me right now.
Okay.
As athletes get older, they typically have a higher level of physical and mental development, right? So if you get a fighter and he starts out, just use floors, right? He starts out on floor 1, he's able to build up to floor 4. Camp's over, he goes down to floor 2 instead of 1, but then he builds up to floor 7. Camp's over, he falls down to floor 4, he start camp, he gets up to floor 9. So each time his level of development physically and mentally goes up. So when he gets to the top and he finally gets to a 10, when camp's over, he doesn't fall all the way down back to a 1 or 2. He falls now to like a 5, 6, or usually 5 or 6. So it doesn't take as long to develop him physically to get to peak performance. Mm-hmm. So as you get older, body changes, metabolism changes. A lot of times trainers train these older fighters as if they were 21 or 18 again.
Right.
Their bodies can't handle it, and they don't have to because they can peak faster.
Yeah.
Especially if they're being consistent outside of camp doing some form of training. So what I do is, which is always the best way for me, is I use something that makes me always know where they're at in the development. And that's their heart rate. You know, a man can lie, a woman can lie, numbers don't. Right. So his heart rate tells me everything I need to know. So he can say, I'm in shape. No, you're not. You're not in shape. Or he can say, Coach, I'm not in shape. And I say, yes, you are. Mentally, you're not doing the things you need to do. Your heart rate is telling me this. You're at this percentage based on where your heart rate should be for maximum capacity. So no, right? And it all changes. And the thing about the heart rate, which is great, if you don't sleep, it shows up. Mm-hmm. If you don't eat right, it shows up. You're right. So it always keeps the governor or gives me a gauge in where you are in your development and how much harder I can push you opposed to how much I can't. So as a person gets older, what I come to find out is I'm able to give them more rest. I don't have to train them the old school way of 7 days a week or even 6 days a week. I think Floyd Mayweather showed us best he said he would train 3 days and then he might not train for 4 and then come back. Yeah. Train for 3, then may not train for 2 because he was allowing him to listen to his body. But once you've done it at a high level over a period of time, you're able to do that. You just got to have someone driving the car who knows how to drive the car. Right. Right. And so that's what I use in that regards. If you know how to manage someone based on the heart rate, you never peak early because you know when you should back off and you know when you should go. So if you see a guy starting to peak, you don't keep training him. You back off of him. Let him lose a little bit of that fitness. Let him eat some cookies or ice cream or whatever it is he ain't supposed to have. Let him have some of that. Enjoy that. And that's going to even mentally allow him to be more focused. And believe it or not, high-end boxers hate rest as much as they may hate doing the run. They hate the rest more. mentally, like it's tormenting. They're like, coach, man, I need to train today. No, you don't. Rest today. But they always come back the next day and be like, right. They feel like if I ain't resting, if I'm not working, I'm not getting better. Mm-hmm. Rest is a workout.
Yeah.
And I make sure that's in every last one of my training sessions and every last one of my training camps. We discuss that even before we start training.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you don't look for
markers. And they trust me enough to be able to make a decision on the call.
So you don't look for markers. You don't look for markers. You don't look like indicators in their performance. You base it all on their heart rate.
Well, not all, but of course you have to be able to have the visual test. If you see a guy who, say for example, now I didn't do this, I wouldn't do this, but say for example, we did squats the day before we spar. His legs aren't moving the way you want them to. They're fatigued. Now, once again, I would never do something like that. But your visual test tells you he doesn't have what he needs right now. Physically, he can't get out the way. He's not throwing the punches the way he needs to. He can't move his feet the way he needs to. This might not be a good day to spar. You might want to just work on something else. That's not even about fitness. That is just about timing, scheduling, and I guess in some way, muscle recovery. His muscles haven't recovered from the day before.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get what you need out of it. And at the end of the day, and for every strength conditioning coach, please hear me when I tell you this. As great of an opportunity we have to be able to be part of these guys' camps and blessed to be there, they're not trying to be heavyweight bodybuilders. They're not trying to be on the NFL team. They're not trying to be on the track and field Olympic team. These guys are professional boxers, and that's what they're here to do. So we are in addition to, meaning accessory, to be able to help them in that process. We are not the quote unquote meat of the game. We're more like the potatoes and sides, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm very okay with that. Huh?
You got to have sides.
Say it again.
You got to have sides.
Gotta have the sides.
Gotta have sides.
Because I love macaroni and cheese. So you gotta have it. So I think sometimes the strength conditioning coaches, which I've seen in the recent years, carry themselves in a way where they feel like they are the reason, or the stars, or they have higher call over the head trainer. And that's not true.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. You have to work together. You have to be understanding. And every team I'm part of, I go to the head trainer first and I'm like, hey, coach, it's whatever you want to see. So if you see something that needs to be improved, let me know. And I'm gonna do what I can on my side to make sure that's improved. It's not about my agenda. It's about their agenda and what they're trying to accomplish and how I can make that better.
Yeah. But communication is key. I mean, you bring up a good point that communication between the strength and conditioning coach and the head trainer is key to this process working properly.
You have to have both, and you have to be on the same page. And one thing I learned earlier is if you come in new into a situation, and this has happened in every new situation I've been part of, they already have their walls and understandings and routines of things. Yep. So sometimes they're a little resistant to having you. They can even want you and still be resistant to having you, right? Because they want to get better, but they may not want to do new things, right? Because change is always hard. So you have to let them know from the very beginning, and I know somebody's going to kill me for saying this, that, hey, I'm here to help. I'm not here to step on anybody's toes. I just want to be able to do whatever I can to make the process better with your support and guidance, because it ain't about what I want. It's about what you feel like you need. And if you give me a voice to tell you what I feel like could be adjusted from my standpoint, I will. And I think that's really important so that the trainers can be comfortable with you and can make it more inviting for you to be part of the family. Because it really is a family. We spend way too much time together to not be in a family mode. Right. Yeah. And to be in unison. You have to be. And you can't bring your ego to the room. You have to be able to, put your ego to the side and just look for the greater good. You have to. Yeah. Well, we've only scratched the surface here today, but I do want to lay it out there. What other sources of information are out there
on your website that are available through you or the other coaches and trainers can tap into? Because not everybody has a strength and conditioning coach. Not everybody can afford one at the level they're at. So what sources are out there? What could a regular coach, an average trainer do to tap into the kind of knowledge you're sharing today?
Doug, can I tell a story real quick and I'll finalize it? I'm sure we have a time.
We're good.
Okay, so let me tell you a situation in which I experienced, and I'll give you the answer to that. I think this was after I won my second world title, well, probably my fourth world title, but I was at the track. I'm not sure which title it was. I'm at the track and I'm watching a trainer train a guy around the track. At this time, we're in Las Vegas, so you know it's hot during the summer. It was probably like 120 something degrees. It was around 1 o'clock. So it was probably at its highest. And it was this young man. He looked about 19 to 20 years old. And it was this trainer that I had seen around the way. Didn't really know him, but I seen him around the way. He was training this young man, and they were running repeat 400s, right? Repeat 400s at 1 minute rest. So I'm just watching. I'm not have nothing to do with it. But since I work at the college at the track, I'm over whatever happens here.
Right.
So I'm watching this guy do this training, and it's steaming hot out here. And he runs one of them, 1 minute rest. Runs a second one, 1 minute rest. Runs a third one, 1 minute rest. By the fourth one, this kid was dying. I mean, he was dying. I mean, his complexion was turning pale. If this was an African-American black kid, he started to turn real pale. And I'm watching it, right? And he's like collapsing on the ground. And this coach is calling him using all kinds of vulgar language. Get up, you this, you this, you this and this. Get your this up and that. And I'm watching it. And the kid, it seems like he's trying his best to give this coach what he wants, right? Sure. And so I decide to walk out as he's about to do a fifth one. And I just started asking questions. I said, hey, coach, what's going on here? What's up, coach? I said, so what are you doing today? And he was like, well, I'm working on running 400s at this pace. I said, okay, what energy system are you working on? What's the target here? I'll just run him. He just got to be tough. And I'm like, oh, okay. So first thing I'm saying is you don't know what energy system you're working on. You don't know why you're working on it, but you're doing it. And I said, so what is the plan here? How many of these? He just needs to run. He's soft. He need to get in shape. And so the kid comes around for the fifth one, and I watch it, right? The kid collapsed at the finish line, right? I mean, collapsed, walling around. He's crying. It's so bad. So I'm having a hard time. I'm biting my tongue from just saying something crazy. And so he actually cusses the kid again and punches the kid to get up. I'm walking out, and he tells the kid to go. The kid is running, swerving in and out the lanes to run another lap. And the kid finishes the run and collapses at the finish line, and I can tell the kid looks like he's about to die. So I said, Coach, that's it. No more. And he's like, no, he just being coach. He being soft. He being a punk. I said, no, he's not. What's his heart rate right now? He looks at me, oh, hell no, he just needs to get up and run. I said, no, you're not about to kill this kid out here. I checked the kid's heart rate, right? I hate to say it, but the kid's heart rate, when they say the max heart rate is supposed to be 220 for a human.
Yeah.
This kid's heart rate was 227.
Oh, geez.
I said, that's it. No more. That's it. You're not training this kid no more. This kid's about to die out here. He could have heart failure right now. That's it. I said, so I don't care what you do. You're not training this kid anymore. You can get off this track. You're not going to do it again. And he's looking at me like kind of upset. When I said, I don't care. This is it. And I have a kind of an intimidating look. So he looked at me kind of upset, but he didn't want to say too much to me. He got mad, stormed off, right? I pulled the kid to the side, gave him some water. He was having a hard time breathing. 10 minutes later, his heart rate was still 190. 10 minutes later.
Wow.
Me and that kid sat out here for 45 minutes. I'm just dousing him with water, letting him drinking it. 45 minutes later, his heart rate was still like 140 beats per minute, right? And at that moment is when I decided I have to do something about this. Mm-hmm. I have to be able to share my knowledge with whoever wants it, right?
Yeah.
So currently, as we speak at this moment, Coach Larry Wade, my group, we're actually putting together online workouts with consulting to help anyone who wants to be counseling. Because like you said, everyone cannot afford a strength conditioning coach. We're giving out amateur workouts. We're giving out elite training workouts. We had our first trial run this past summer with Austin Dulay, who was in Tennessee. And he actually did our first online consulting Zoom, camp.
Yeah.
And he actually dominated at the fight and broke his punch record, and which is what we were looking to do. Just because, and the dad, the funny thing about it, the dad says to me, Coach Wade, I realize now I've been overworking my son this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
This entire time I've been doing so much. I've just felt like if I didn't pound it on him, that he wasn't prepared. So I was a little nervous going into the fight, doing it your way. But I realized now that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Because
I didn't have to kill him the way I've been killing him. And he looked great, performed well, and did an amazing job. So we're going to be offering that on our website, CoachLarryWade.com. We're going to be offering that in the next 2 weeks for everyone. Great. From a package standpoint. Also, we're going to be presenting different exercises from that are on those workouts, hopefully title sponsored.
Absolutely.
But we're going to be offering those as well. And I feel like, and last but not least, I am releasing a book this year in regards to that as well, how to get ready for a camp. And so that I can walk people through the concept and the thoughts of how to do it from a healthy standpoint.
Right.
Because it does me no good to be able to train the type of fighters I'm able to train at the level I'm able to train it at, and me know that there's still other trainers just like this guy out there who doesn't have access to this information.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it in a way that I think now people see me enough in the sport to be able to say, I know that guy. I really don't know what he do, but I know, but I know him. He has something to do with boxing. Yep. And so to be able to connect the two, and for even trainers who are strength conditioning coaches to have my concept of how I feel like we can get there in a healthy manner and be a resource for everyone. So that's the direction that we're going. I've researched, there are some good guys out there. Like you said, Mackie Shilstone is one of them.
Yep.
But the resource, the ability to connect with that person, see that person, have access to that person, is challenging.
Yeah.
So Coach Larry Wade, with everything that I do, Coach Larry Wade Instagram, Coach Larry Wade Facebook, Coach Larry Wade Twitter, and Coach Larry Wade at Gmail is there. So great. Anybody who needs help, I'm there. If I can't personally help you, I would direct you to someone who can.
That's fantastic. What a great service.
Thank you so much. I really do believe we have a responsibility. Yeah. And Doug, you're definitely fulfilling your responsibility to the sport. So I applaud you.
Thank you. We're all trying our best. So everybody, I encourage all of our listeners and viewers out there, follow Coach Larry Wade on all of his Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
everything,
Gmail, everything. And you'll announce when this training series is coming out there. Yeah.
Yep. The training series should be released in the next 2 weeks. We're going to release it online at CoachLarryWade.com. We're going to make those offers. We're creating the videos to those exercises now. So if you don't know exactly what they are, you can go to the YouTube and check it out at Coach Larry Wade and say, okay, that's the exercise that he's speaking of. We're filming those at the moment. So we're definitely going to release that soon.
Great. You give us the word. We'll put it on our page too. Make sure everybody out there
well, I hope so, because I'm going to have on title equipment. So
I don't hate that. So. I don't hate that.
So that's the plan.
Well, Coach Wade, thank you so much for sharing your time, not just today, but just in general with the boxing community. It's such a great service and such a great value. It's something that's been needed for so long that people are going to benefit so much from it.
Thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing, using your platform to make other people great. Even though you may not see me and I may not see you often, I see your work. And I think that matters more than anything else. When people say, hey, I met your kid and he's an amazing kid, that means more to me than saying, hey, Coach Wade, you're amazing. So that's the impact that I see that you're making, not only for yourself and not only for your family, But for all these young men and women around the world who I see and interact with, and they say, and it kills me because like, hey, coach, I'm with Title. And I'm like, oh, really? I know him. I know Doug. Yeah. You know, so that excites me.
Yeah, Larry, appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you soon. We'll be there before too long. We'll hook up.
Yes, sir. And last but not least, listen, as I leave, understand this. It's my motto, but I want it to be the whole world's motto, and that is love more, enjoy more, and always expect greatness in everything you do, and don't settle for anything less.
I love it. 100%.
Yes, sir. You have a good one.
Thanks, Coach. We'll see you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our Title Boxing YouTube page.